A very good evening to one and all who have joined us for today's webinar. I am Kirtika from the Global Wildlife Fair team. So, firstly, we'll be talking about the Global Wildlife Fair. It is a platform that brings together adventurers, ecologists, photographers, and storytellers from around the world. We celebrate the joy that lies in exploration of nature, discovering new species, new landscapes, new experiences, while connecting people who share that passion with us for the natural world. At its core, the Global Wildlife Fair is about building a global community that learns, travels, and grows together. For this webinar, the Global Wildlife Fair has collaborated with Delhi Tourism. The collaboration between the Global Wildlife Fair and Delhi Tourism creates a meaningful platform that brings together nature, conservation, and public awareness closer to the urban audiences. By joining hands, the partnership helps to highlight Delhi's rich yet often overlooked natural heritage through engaging initiatives such as webinars, discussion, and outreach programs, encouraging people to better understand and coexist with the biodiversity that lies around them. The theme for today's webinar is Living with Amphibians, Understanding and Coexisting with Delhi NCR's Amphibian Diversity. Here we would explore the fascinating world of amphibians in Delhi NCR and learn how frogs, toads, and other species play a vital role in our ecosystem. This webinar will highlight the diversity, habitats, and simple way people can understand, protect, and coexist with these often overlooked urban neighbors. And for this very interesting session, we have with us Dr. Robin Suyesh. Sir is a field biologist and researcher whose work has significantly advanced the understanding of amphibians and reptiles all across South and Southeast Asia. His studies have spanned in some of the region's most important biodiversity hotspots, including the Western Ghats, Central India, the Himalayan region of the Indian subcontinent, Malaysian Borneo, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Indonesia. With a strong focus on the behavior and ecology of herpetofauna, he played an important role in documenting the ambient diversity. He has co-authored the description of 13 new species so far. His doctoral research title, Acoustic Communication in Bush Frogs of the genera Rochestis and Saurophylatus, was carried out at the University of Delhi in collaboration with the University of Minnesota, USA. In recognition of his contributions, he received the Developing Nations Award from the Animal Behavior Society, Illinois, USA in 2014. He currently serves as an assistant professor in the Department of Environmental Sciences at Sri Venkateswara College, University of Delhi, where he continues to research, teach, and work towards biodiversity conservation. We welcome you, sir, and without much ado, I would like to hand over the session to sir to lead us into this very intriguing discussion. Yes, sir.
So good evening, everyone. Yeah, so I would like quickly start because we lost a bit of time because of the technical problem. Anyways, so I'll just start with the amphibians of Delhi, the first part of my presentation. Uh, yeah. So if you look at amphibians of Delhi, we basically have three families of frogs here in this city, like in Delhi NCR. So basically, like I'm basically referring to areas around Delhi and like NCR region. So there are a couple of species that belong to a family called as microhylids, which uh, in which like I mean of course I'll go through all the pictures and all the recordings of all of these species, and then there is a from family which has the maximum number of species, which is called as the dicroglossids. Then we have buffonids, which we normally refer to as toads, and all of these eight species belong to seven different genera of frog, and in total of eight species. So let's start with the first one, the family microhylids. So when you look at the first one, microhylids, so this first species that we have is the narrow-mouthed frog. This is which is referred to as Microhyla Nilpha mariensis. It's very small. This is basically the smallest, the frog that you find in Delhi. And technically, this would possibly have the title of the smallest vertebrate from Delhi. We will not have any other animal which is a vertebrate which could be smaller than this, because the body size of this particular frog is barely 20 millimeter. So it's a very tiny animal. And this species is very sensitive to pollution. So uh, you don't see in like polluted water bodies that are there. So, and it is restricted to some clean green space that we have in the city, where water quality is still adequate from them. And they would basically, they will not be seen directly in the middle of like water body or the pond. You can see them on the edges of the pond, like in small holes that are around, like, which basically can be created by various human activity or maybe some animal movement or something. So they would hide in those crevices which are there, and they will be calling from those areas. And since it's very tiny, so it's very hard to locate. And but yes, they're very loud. So if you go out in the forest during the monsoon, you will basically hear a loud sound from these. You can actually feel like a number of individuals calling randomly, like all across the place, like around the pond. But then you will also find it challenging to locate this particular animal. So I can just show a small video which basically shows a frog. You can see this is basically hiding in a muddy, small, hole that is there on the ground, and it is calling from that. I hope the audio uh, is there. I hope the audio was there. Yeah. So moving on to the next species, which is also a species that belongs to microhylids, which we called as the balloon frog. You can see it's one of the most beautiful looking frogs in Delhi NCR. It is basically having leopard-like pattern on its body, and it becomes very bright yellow when you see them in the night in the breeding season. And these frogs are one of the most elusive frogs because they are vocally active only for a day, maximum two. So if you don't find them on that particular day, then you will probably not find this species again. Only encounters that you might have for this species might be accidental. They might be still visible if you search for them extensively, but you will not find them vocally active. So they breed. The entire breeding process for this particular species will happen uh, in just one day. So so we call such species as explosive breeders. So that is one of the reasons why mostly people don't see this particular frog. But of course, they are there, and we have quite a few places where you can spot these animals. But the only thing is that we need to be at the right place at the right time. So this is one of those frogs which, if you think that you go and you will find this one during the monsoon, it might not be, you might not be able to see them. So it's basically either you can be there on the day when it vocalizes and you can find them, or it can be just accidental sightings because they would still be foraging around even after their breeding is over. So they basically are underground fossorial animals. So basically they live under the ground, but they are out during the monsoon. So they breed for a day and then you can see them foraging. But all those encounters are quite accidental. So, if a frog is not vocally active, I believe it's pretty hard to find because they're all nocturnal. Daytime, you don't sight them. And in the night, you have to do extensive searching for these animals, and then only you will encounter them. But if it is a vocally active, it's pretty easy to find them because you can just track the sound. uh, I can just show a small video of this particular frog because, when you look at this species, these frogs actually call from the middle of the water body, and it's really, really hard and very, very, it's really, really hard to photograph or make a video because slight movement when you like move around this animal. They will just go under the water and they will not be there out for like quite some time. I can the video that I'm going to show, like it actually took more than 2 hours for me to shoot because I literally froze at one place in the middle of the water body, and I shot this animal from the top, and I was lucky that it just came out in near just next to me, and then it was calling and I was just standing still. So you can see the video for yourself. Yeah, this one. So this species, you can see how it is perching onto the like small vegetation that is there on the top of the water and it's calling from the top. And yeah, and very, very sensitive. And if you just disturb them a bit, also they will stop. But of course, they will come out because they are only active for one day. So they will be there. But if you keep disturbing them, they will not be. It's really difficult to uh, get these photographs and videos because they just tend to move away from you. If the water moves a little bit, you know, so they become very, very, they're very, very sensitive, when you are encountering them in the field. And the next group of frogs that we have is basically, which sometimes we call, them as toads as well, because I mean, there is something that I should say. There normally people will ask questions about like the toads and frogs. So everything basically is a frog, and there are certain frogs which we call as toads. So this is one of them. We have two species of toads in Delhi NCR, and one of them breeds like this one. This is basically the common Asian toad, which is the Taphrinus melanostictus. So this one breeds basically very early in the monsoon. You can see them breeding in the month of May, or maybe sometimes in even in April. I have also seen them breeding in some places in the month of February. So if they feel like coming out, they will breed in these three. So they will actually finish their breeding activity before the real monsoon actually starts. So this particular species, you can see them, though it is common toad, it is not very common. The other species of toad that we have is more common because they breed for a long time all throughout the monsoon, and whenever you are out, you will find them in the field. So that's the other species of toad that will come later. So you can see this is the toad that makes vocalization like this, and you can also see the sort of habitat they basically live in, which they are there. You can see it's like somewhere in the, they require, yeah, on the edges of the pond, you will see. So this is how they sound. And I mean, I believe these frogs might be active now also because it rained a little bit yesterday, so it might be out somewhere. So this is the other species which you will definitely see. It's the most common frog in Delhi NCR, which we call as the marble toad or the Indus Valley toad, which is called as the Taphrinus stomaticus. So this is the species that you will find all throughout the monsoon season. So they breed almost, you can see them in June, July, August, and they can breed in any sort of water body, with small puddles to even edges of the large water bodies, you will find these animals. So yeah, it's quite common, and I believe you are highly likely to encounter this around your house as well. If you are anywhere in Delhi, I have seen them in a lot of areas. It's one of the most common frogs. So this is how it sounds. This is one of the most common sounds that you will encounter during the monsoon. Now, coming on to the next group of frogs that we have that I was talking about earlier, which is called as the dicroglossids. So this is one of those species which we have. It's also a species of burrowing frog. Uh, Again, they also have a very short window during the monsoon season when they breed, so you can see them vocalizing on for at least 2 to 3 weeks, and they vocalize on those days when it rains properly. So that means even in those 2 3 weeks, if you're there out in the field, not every day you will hear them making sound. But yes, if it has rained nicely for during that particular span of time, you might hear them vocalizing. They have also very loud, powerful calls, and you know, this is one of those frogs which also lives underground, like the one that I showed earlier, the balloon frog. So this is also a species of frog that are fossorial in nature. So that is why they are called as burrowing frogs. You can see the how it vocalizes. So this is the video of the same male that you saw the photograph. Yeah. So uh, this is a frog that you will find mostly breeding in water bodies which are like not exposed. That is what I've seen mostly, like water bodies that are mostly covered with vegetation and they have trees surrounding them. If you see any open water bodies, you are not likely to encounter this particular species. And the soil around those water bodies needs to be really, I mean, it's very really soft. Uh, so though in the picture you see, but this is like the edge of the pond where they are basically vocalizing, not exactly the place where they will be burrowing, but yeah. So they will breed and they will retreat in those places and all of those areas. And again, population density is not really high in any area when you encounter them. So it's not really that you will find a lot of these individuals, but yes, they are found in quite a lot of places. But uh, I mean, you don't see them quite often. And plus, they also have a short breeding window. So again, you need to follow the timelines which the frogs has in order to spot this animal in the city. The next one, of course, this is one of those frogs which basically, I think there are a lot of photographs and videos because this is one of those frog that gets peculiar coloration during the monsoon. These males become bright yellow and they have like dark blue vocal sacs. And they are the largest frog that we have in subcontinent. And you can also encounter this particular frog also you encounter only for a few days in Delhi NCR. They are also frogs that breed during the pre-monsoon season. So you can see them like the first rain that happens before the monsoon hits, like during like say May end or June first week. That is when you will find. So for a week, the if it is raining, you can see these males will call for like 4 or 5 days, and they will finish their breeding, and then they will disappear again. So this is, but it's quite fascinating. The frogs completely change its color; it becomes yellow, and if you encounter them rest of the season during after that their breeding window that is there like for a week, you will find them like in like olive green color or something like that. So they will no longer look like this, in the even if you encountered them during the monsoon season, because the breeding gets over quite early, and they are also one of those frogs which we call as explosive breeders because they also breed in a very short window timeline, so you don't hear them calling quite often. But since they are very large animals, you can see them, if they are there in any water body. So, and also, quite commonly seen. And since they are big, they are more tolerant to, some like the pollutants and all of those things. So even in some of those polluted areas, I have seen encountered these frogs. But yeah, I mean, I have not seen them breeding, but they are there. I mean, of course, I'm not sure. I may not be there at the right time, but I'm just saying it's like something that you might encounter in different kinds of water bodies across the city. Um, yeah. So this is how this animal vocalizes, and it's very, very. It can be heard for a very long distance because these frog calls are quite low frequency, so it travel for a long distance. You can see. This is one of those frogs, which again is one of the most common frog. The other one that I showed was what we call as toad. This is one of the most common ones. This is what we call as the cricket frog. Again, these are quite common and breeds, during monsoon, and they have a very also during monsoon, but they also have a very long breeding window. So right now it rained. I have seen them vocalizing from like the first rain that happens in the spring, and they will call all the way down. If you are there in the field in October also, you will find them. So they probably are vocalizing for almost 8 months throughout the year. So, and they will vocalize any day when you see a good amount of rainfall that has happened in the city. So, it's quite easily seen in the city. And if you go to any green space, you will find this frog. Even if I have not seen some other species in certain areas that I've been, this frog has been there in that area. If it is a relatively water body which is in good condition, so you will encounter these kind of frogs. So this is what we call as the Pierre's wart frog, or sometimes we also refer to as the cricket frog. Yeah, and this is how it calls. You can see. I mean, I think you all must be familiar with this sound as well because it's very commonly seen. If you've been through any paddy field or anything, you will hear these kind of sounds. So it's quite common across the city. Yeah. And the last one, this is one of those frogs which we call as the skipper frog, and they actually are found. I think you can encounter them throughout the year because they live in permanent water bodies and they breed throughout the year. So even if you're going, I mean, in the peak winters, if I've visited certain water bodies, I have seen them vocalizing even in January, when the temperature around is quite low, still they are vocalizing. So it's one of the most, this frog is active throughout the year. So you will definitely find them anytime you go to any permanent water bodies which is in good condition. So they are there. And, the name skipper frog comes from its characteristic ability to run on top of the water. And they're very territorial frogs as well. You can see them indulging in territorial conflicts with the males that are around their habitat, uh, wherever, like in the pond, if they're taking some space, you can see them. And of course, um, this species you might encounter vocalizing on any, as I said, like if it rains on any of those days, they will definitely be uh, vocally active more, like they will be more vocally active compared to the days it doesn't rain. But as I said, since they live in permanent pools, so it doesn't really need that stimulus of rain to be vocally active. So you can encounter them on dry days also vocalizing. So it's if you have known that this frog lives in a certain area, they will always be there, and it's something that doesn't vanish. And I think they're a very important part of the food chain. I mean, if you have seen any photographs of any bird feeding on a frog, most likely this is the frog that is being eaten. So, so that's why it becomes very important part of the ecosystem as well. And they have to breed constantly because if they are being eaten in that numbers, they also need to breed. So, yeah, I think it's one of the most important frogs that we have because uh, you know they are active throughout the year, and if you don't see any frog on in the field, you might just encounter this one if you visit any permanent water bodies. So yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I believe I mean, I just wanted to discuss about the issues that typically the amphibians face in the city. So if you look at this particular photograph, you can actually see a plastic bag in the background, and you can see a male that is vocalizing in the scene. This is a very common sight on across all habitats that frogs have in the city. This is one of those photographs that I took in Yeah, one of those areas which is basically on the edge of the, city, uh, uh, and as you know, the city is expanding, so this is one of those places which would become urbanized very soon. The construction was already on in these areas, so that you can see the frogs rapidly vanishing and losing their habitat across the city. So this is a very common sight, and what in any water body that you visit, which is not really protected properly, you will see it's becoming dirty with full of plastic and other kinds of waste. So it becomes really difficult for amphibians to survive. So this is one of those biggest challenge that you see for amphibians in the city. I can show some examples. So I was just talking about, this is one of those papers that we published a couple of years back as well. And it was also there. We also shared it through media as well. You can see this is a photograph of microhyla, which is developing with an eye abnormality. So uh, this is what we call as anophthalmia. So you can see the one of the eye is missing in this particular picture. You can see the left eye is missing for this particular frog, and luckily we saw that this frog when it was in the late tadpole stage, and we allowed it to grow before we released it. You can see it became a sub-adult without eye, and this is one of those problems that basically amphibians face. It mostly happens because of the environmental stress that is around the habitat, one of the reasons that has been cited for it. So there are various kinds of stress that can happen. Since we haven't done studies, we need more time and more specimens to understand why exactly this is happening. But this is one of those findings which actually tells about the problems that these species might be encountering in their natural habitat in the Delhi NCR. So this basically is photograph from Delhi, and this was one of those stories that came in the newspaper, that we published. Even the research paper is out for this particular finding as well. It came out a particular couple of years back when we got more one more species which having similar problem. We also got a uh, Operodon, the balloon frog, with similar problem. So we sort of published both the species together. And this is the story of Ornata. This is the first one that we encountered a long way, way back. And it's almost 8 years back. Actually, you can see the date. It was 20th March. Uh, exactly 6 years before. Yeah. So which it was published. Uh, yeah, but we got the other species, I think, 3 years back, and we combined both of them, and we published a paper on that as well. So this is another big problem that amphibians face because we know that because of urbanization, the habitats of these amphibians are getting disconnected. So this is one of those problems that you see, and one of the most affected species is the Indus Valley toad or marble toad that you saw, the Tafrinus tomaticus. These toads basically are slow dispersers and they move really slowly on the road. And if they are trying to move from one area to another to breed, during the process, they might die as roadkill. So that is this is one of the biggest victim because in the night, the amphibians are active only in the night and they try to move out from the wherever they are there in the day, and they try to come to the water body. And if it happens to be disconnected by a road where vehicles are moving, they will definitely, uh, you know, they can basically die as a roadkill in that process. So this is one of the common sites, and um, I am keeping this as an example because 80% I think of the amphibian roadkill that is there happens to this particular species only, as per my study in Delhi NCR. And also, of course, there are other species of amphibians that also die as roadkill, but I'm keeping this as one of the biggest victim. And um, and also one more important thing that when you look at any species that die on the roads in NCR, this is one of the amphibians form the biggest, has the biggest share of animals dying as roadkills in the city. Even we carried out, to spread awareness. The story was also published in Times of India a few years back. So, the most animals that you see dead on roads in Delhi NCR are amphibians. So it's one of the biggest challenge. So we actually undertook this as a small project to understand what exactly we can do to keep amphibians safe from this to happen. So I can show a short film that we made, which is of 10 minutes, which will give you an idea about what we. It was a pilot project. We tried to design some solutions for roadkills for amphibians, like to solve this problem of roadkill of amphibians in Delhi NCR. And my study area was Gurgaon, so I can show that particular film. Yeah, it's just 10 minutes. Yeah, so that was the short film that we made to spread awareness about roadkill and small solution about how we can basically reduce roadkill. So that is something, of course, it needs to be replicated and it needs to be done on a large scale to get, of course, what I want to point out here is that uh, all of these solutions are basically site specific. So, one solution may not work in certain areas. So we need to actually work and understand what sort of problem is there in a particular area and how we can solve certain problems in that particular place. So there is still a long way to see and address all of these challenges. And along with all of these problem of roadkill, you also might have, like in the film also we have talked about climate change. So basically, it's one of the biggest challenge for amphibians because rainfall uncertainty is one of the problems that amphibians face, and this I have encountered quite like over a period of time because amphibians require consistent amount of rainfall all throughout the season, and if because of certain reason it doesn't rain for a prolonged period of time, they may not develop because they will not be able to reproduce properly because of course, when an amphibian lay eggs in the water body, it needs a certain amount of time to develop in that particular water body, and water needs to be there in that water body to support its development. So if rainfall is not consistent, so sometimes water bodies dries up, and you can see eggs becoming like desiccating, and sometimes the tadpoles die. So, and climate change actually has created one of the biggest problem. It hasn't much reduced the amount of rainfall, but it has actually reduced the number of rainy days. So this problem is a very big problem which is happening all across the world, including our city as well. And of course, if any changes are there in wetland hydrology, it impacts amphibians as well. So there are a lot of solutions. Of course, we need to have a lot of awareness about amphibians and how they're important around us. We should always protect our wetlands and the ephemeral pools. If a certain water body dries up in when it is not the monsoon season, that doesn't mean that it can be taken over for certain other activity because many water bodies ephemeral pools are really important for amphibians because amphibians prefer breeding in those pools because it helps them, safety. It basically ensures the safety from predators because permanent pools mostly have predators which are already there to, pick them up. But if they breed in ephemeral pools before the predators know, they would have already bred and gone from that particular. So that basically, most of these frogs prefer breeding in these ephemeral pools. Obviously, increasing green cover and regular monitoring of these species and reducing any direct anthropogenic threats that are there is also one of the things that we can do. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope if you have any questions, you can ask. Yeah, I hope I was
So,
audible all throughout. Yeah.
yes, you were pretty much audible. And yes, I can see a lot of questions in the chat box. So, I think the first question I'll be taking is of Anish. So, Anish wants to ask, during monsoon, temporary puddles becomes breeding ground. How important are these short-lived habitats in compared to permanent wetlands?
Can you repeat the question? I think I missed it.
Okay. So it says that during monsoon, temporary puddles becomes breeding grounds. How important are these short-lived habitats in comparison to permanent wetlands?
Yeah, oh, yeah, they are really, really important. That's what I was saying. Frogs mostly prefer these temporary water pools only. Firstly, it helps them escape predators because when you look at a permanent pool, you will have already established predators in that particular area. So they can easily avoid that. Plus, most of these frogs all of these frogs actually have a specific microhabitat, and most of these microhabitats are associated with these ephemeral pools. So of course, according to species, their requirements will change. And if you extensively look at these 8 species that we have in NCR, they have, of course, some preferences over why they will be there in certain water bodies and some why they will not be there in certain water bodies that you can, that you can just look into, in different areas of the city, and you can actually figure out what exactly is the requirement of each of these species. So obviously, what I have come to know after all of these studies, that ephemeral pools are actually really important for these amphibians. And that is one of the most vulnerable habitat also. That's what I was pointing out right now. Yeah. So I mean, I hope I have explained, or if you have any more query, please, you can always ask.
So moving on to the next question, it is by Aditi. She wants to
Yeah.
ask, how does the disappearance of amphibians affect insect population in urban neighborhoods in ways that people might be experiencing?
Ah, yeah. Of course, it's a really, really, if you look at amphibians, they are one of the biggest insect predators that we have around the city. A small toad that hops around during the monsoon around your house or something can actually feed more than 1,000 to 2,000 insects in one day. So you can imagine they're voracious feeders. And people, sometimes there are a lot of associated memes about frogs as well. Like if you don't have frogs, we will be full of, like, the whole world will be full of insects, because they're the most important natural predator that we have for insects are frogs. And if you see a water body with good amount of insects, if you walk around those places, they basically keep population of these insects under control. And when many of these insects basically are also disease vectors, so they keep us safe as well, so that's really important. It's really important to have frogs around, so that it's basically for a very like it maintains a very healthy ecosystem, keeping the checks and balances that is there in an ecosystem. Right? They are really important, as a predator for insects.
So, moving on to the next question, it is by Amrut. In cities where fear often leads to killing small wildlife, how can communication around amphibians move beyond conservation language to genuine coexistence?
See, the of course, it basically depends on like how much we understand these animals and how much we want them to be around us. There are a lot of of course, people need to know about them and how they are important, and so coexistence can only happen when you know the animal properly and you understand how important they are, for you as well. So that is one of those most important thing. And amphibians, the best thing about amphibians is that they don't have a very big requirement, So, if you just try and protect whatever we have in a certain way, or design the any infrastructure projects that is coming up in certain way that it doesn't disturb a small water body, or things that are there, which can support amphibian life in that area. I think that is more than enough, because they don't have that kind of requirement, so they don't actually need a very big area, so that's a very important thing to understand. So there can always be coexistence if you follow the I mean, if you just follow, like, some important things, like, uh, and again, if the water bodies are around, it actually benefits us also. It helps us in our groundwater recharge and all of those other things. Uh, generally, speaking, these if we actually design, the modern societies in certain way that we can have some of these areas intact, I think that would be a good solution, because we cannot stop people from occupying lands and all, but we need to figure out a certain way where we actually put up some guidelines where we should maintain all of these water bodies. And that's really important, because I don't think so we follow any of these things properly. So that's one of the reasons why things, I mean, in Delhi, for example, you can see we have depleted most of the amphibian microhabitats, and we don't really encounter amphibians much. I gave example of NCR all the time, because NCR is still coming up, and there you can actually encounter a lot of these amphibians. So that is one of those places where we can actually plan and design things in a certain way where we can have them around us. So I think spreading awareness, and about amphibians is really important so that people understand why they're important to have them around us. So I think that would be a one of those steps that can help in future. Yeah.
That was really insightful. Moving on to the next question, it is by Arif. He wants to ask, what is one overlooked everyday human habit in cities that unintentionally harms amphibian population the most?
Um, Most of the things that you see are actually unintentional only because I think people don't really know about amphibians here in the city. They don't know that they exist also. That's the problem because when I started working on amphibians, if I was looking at scientific literature about amphibians, I saw two frogs to be present after so much of search, and there was no proper scientific papers that was telling me about what sort of diversity this area has about amphibians. While you will see a lot of books written on birds, that is what you should see. I mean, if everybody knew that there are more than 300 species of birds in Delhi NCR, but nobody knew that there are 8 species of frogs as well until we did like extensive field survey across the NCR to figure out. So I started actually from scratch, and even the species that one or two of the species that was listed in old literature was also inaccurate in terms of identification of that particular species. So I think that's one of those challenges. People don't know much about them, and like talking about unintentional problem. Obviously, they are nocturnal, so you don't really see them around you, and people are mostly not going out in the night to check for frogs around their place. So I believe when you don't know, you do a lot of things which might be harming them, and you actually cannot figure out that they are actually harming them. All of these 8 species that we just spoke about, they're all nocturnal, so you don't really encounter them in the day in the city. So I believe anything, which we do around their habitat probably will end up disturbing them, especially, you can see roadkills. For example, they start moving out from their hiding spots to water body during the night. And so many people drive at night as well. So, and they are so small that you can't really see them, that they're moving around on the road. And of course, they can be killed in the process. So that is a very like direct impact which humans do for these amphibians. Uh, and of course, um, I believe some of them would have, uh, if at all somebody knew and they had some idea about what is happening at night around their place where they live. I mean, of course, I can see some people might be interested in helping them out as well, but unfortunately, there is a lack of awareness about amphibians in general. So I think that's one of the biggest challenge.
Okay, sir. And moving on to the one last question before we wind up, it is by Pooja. She wants
Yeah.
to ask, since amphibians often survive unnoticed along dense human population, what science suggests that urban residents are already sharing spaces with them without realizing it?
Yeah, there are certain species of amphibians, like say I was talking about these the Indus Valley toad or the marble toad. They are one of those frogs that they don't have much requirement and they can survive in even in minimalistic kind of conditions. You can see them hopping around your house as well in the lawn, backyard if you stay close to some green space. So you can actually see them, and they actually are pretty much coexistent in many parts of the city, along with urban settlements. But you don't see other frogs. Why? Because they have some very specific requirements, and that doesn't make them survive in such conditions. So their microhabitat preferences are quite different from these Indus Valley toads. So you won't see all of them, but you will see at least this one surviving along with the humans population in urbanized conditions as well. But of course, that is why one of the reasons why I mentioned that this is one of the biggest victim also living along with humans. They die mostly as road kills. So that's also one of the challenge we can, so yeah, I mean, if it becomes too urbanized as well, also they will lose their breeding habitat. So then also you can't encounter these animals. Now they are able to breed in some places in those urban pockets as well. So that's why you encounter them. Otherwise, you know, amphibians do need a small water body around their place, and if it is completely vanishing, so they won't be able to survive. That is one of the most important thing to understand in this case. Yeah.
I think with this, we come to an end of today's session. Firstly, I would like to thank Sir for taking out his precious time and sharing such intriguing information with us. Dear participants, for more such intriguing webinars where you discover new species in and around Delhi, do not forget to follow our Instagram page. And we can definitely not wait to see you at the Global Wildlife Fair that will be held from 30th, 31st October to 1st November 2026 at the Travancore Palace this year. Good evening, everyone. Hope to see you for more such webinars. Thank you.